Hey,
Ah, there we go.
hey everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of In Conversation with on my channel where I interview middle grade authors. And today I have the absolutely incredible, legendary, one and only Cassidy to my Jacob, Victoria Schwab. Thank you so
Aw,
much for coming.
it's so good to be here.
I mean, the pleasure is all mine. I'm so glad that you're here, and I feel like it's going to be a really good chat. I tried to get questions that I think you might not have answered before. Fingers crossed.
I can't
Fingers
wait. Well, and I've just spent the last 6 months talking about my adult book, Addie LaRue. So
crossed.
this is a joy. I can't wait. This is all going to be new questions for me.
Yay, I thought because we need to give a huge spotlight to your middle grade series, the Cassidy Blake series. I mean, it's definitely beloved on BookTube, I think, but it's not to the extent of all of your other books. So it's
Yeah.
great to be able to talk about it today. So yeah,
Yeah.
and for anyone watching, there are links to pre-order, or if you're watching this in the future, to buy Bridge of Souls. It comes out early March, I think March 2nd in the
March
US
2nd. Yeah.
and March 5th in the UK. So, I mean, all of them are. I'm so glad that they're so close together as well.
Me
Phew.
too.
Gosh, nothing worse than living in the UK and having a book come out like 6 months in, America and having to wait or import it. I mean, which I wouldn't mind doing, but still, it's handy
It
to go into
makes no
Waterstones and grab it.
It makes no sense, especially as someone who split like on normal times. I split my time between the United States and the UK. And so I always get really pissy when I'm living in the UK and I want a book and it's come out in the States and it hasn't come out here.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that's not fair at all. So I tend to push really hard with my publishers to at least make the US and the UK come out at the same time, if not other countries.
Oh, well, we appreciate it a lot. We do appreciate it a lot.
Pure selfish. It's just a pure selfish reader desire.
I think so. Well, I mean, I want to start off with the random questions, the questions I haven't even shown you yet. So, I mean, hopefully I've kind of thought outside the box for these. Anyway, my kind of icebreaker round is really bizarre. But anyway, are you more of a Marvel fan or a DC fan?
You know, you thought it was going to be a short answer. I'm more of a Marvel fan, but I was a fan of the DC comics, but I've not been a fan of the DC like live action just because to me, like I was obsessed with the Joker and Batman, and I really liked that those characters tended to go a lot darker
Yeah.
than Marvel characters, a lot more like psychological. But as far as movies and such, I'm enamored with the Marvel movies for all their flaws. I will watch them anytime they come on television. It's just I can't help myself.
Have you been watching WandaVision as well?
I
Or
haven't watched it yet but I have a good reason, which is that up until last Friday, I was working in a writer's room for my first ever TV show. And the hours were so atrocious for me because I'm here in France and it's LA time that I wasn't finishing until like 2 or 3 in the morning. So I am just returning to the land of the living, and I have like a list on my wall of all of the shows that I want to watch and get caught up on, and WandaVision is at the top of it.
oh my God, you're gonna have such a list. Like you're not even gonna have time to write or anything.
I've taken the shows like on the stationary bike with me. Like I'm taking shows everywhere just because I wanna fill that creative well and catch up on everything. Is it good though?
I've been enjoying it. It's
Yeah.
infuriating when an episode ends because that's when it gets really, really good.
Worse.
But that just means it's like such a great program. I'm enjoying it for better or worse. I'm enjoying this show,
Good,
so
good. I
I think
can't
you'll love
wait.
it. Yeah. Do you have a favorite villain? Can be from books, can be from movies.
Definitely Magneto.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Because
that's
I
such a
like
good
a
one.
villain that has a heroic identity. Like the thing about Magneto, right, is like you get why he is the way he is. I think as long as they have an origin story that speaks to the why as well as the who, those are the things that intrigue me most. And so, as much fun as it is to look at a character like Joker, who's purely yin and yang with Batman, I love Magneto for just having like a very strong point of view and rationale for why he does what he does.
Yeah, I love a villain who you can just kind of understand or almost relate to in a way, like you can see what they've gone through, and you do have a little bit of compassion for Magneto a bit.
Yeah.
For yeah, um, so you've got a really good imagination. I kind of want you to picture yourself as a wrestler. Um, So what? I mean, it's not hard to do. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
imagination can like, go places. What would your entrance song be if you were a wrestler?
Oh no. Okay, definitely Queen.
Ooh,
Like definitely Queen. I'm thinking, I mean, We Will Rock You is too obvious.
but it's
I'm
fun.
thinking through
It's a
all
crowd
my
pleaser.
Huh?
It's a crowd pleaser.
I know. I'm gonna do We Will Rock You. I pretty much play anything by Queen to pump myself up on any given day. But yeah, We Will Rock You by Queen.
Okay, that's a really good answer actually. I probably give
Because
a
think
vote.
of how deep that is. My name is Victoria Elizabeth, and I'm named for two queens. And so really, it's just like good to have that continuity thread.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's yeah. That is a really imaginative way of putting it as well. That's really good. So what has been the place? Because you're quite a traveler as well. And what's been the place that has kind of been the one that stuck to you the most, like of all of the places you've been to?
So definitely Edinburgh, Scotland, because I live there now, but the whole reason I live there is because I travel so much for work that for me, the idea of vacation meant going home to a place that I desperately wanted to be because I go everywhere else. And
Yeah.
so when I was in my early 20s, I was living in a garden shed, like an actual garden shed in an ex-prison warden's backyard in the Liverpool suburbs. Just let that sink in, that whole
Wow.
image. And I
Yeah.
was so miserable that my housemate at the time, one of like 7 housemates, definitely wasn't a legal setup, would take me to random places. And one time they took me to the train station and I took a train to Edinburgh for the very first time in my life. And my grandparents are from Glasgow, so this was betrayal, right? But I set foot in Edinburgh, and the very moment that my foot hit the soil outside the train station, it just felt like all the silt in me settled to the ground. I just felt home.
Yeah. It's a magical place. It's not that far from where I live, so when you get the train there, it's very it just I don't know, it's like the air feels different, it smells different. You set in the bustle, the hustle and bustle of
Oh, that
everyone.
train
It's,
ride is amazing too because it takes you up along the coast through Berwick, and it's just I don't know what it is. Like, there's a reason the first City of Ghosts book is written there. Is just I have been enamored with it. I went to graduate school there mostly because I wanted an excuse to live there. So I thought to myself, oh, well, if I go to graduate school, then I'll have an excuse. It wasn't until after I survived graduate school that I learned that I could have just gotten citizenship because my family's British. And I
uh,
was like, God damn it. Are you serious? Like, I just went to graduate school when I could have literally just applied for a passport. So that's what I did after.
it all worked out in the end anyway, so it's all good. It's all good. It's a lesson.
Choices. Choices.
So a last icebreaker kind of question then. What were you like when you were Cassidy's age? Were you like Cassidy or were you totally different?
I was definitely darker. Like, I was the kind of 10, 11-year-old who definitely was like the soul of an 85-year-old Scotsman in an 11-year-old's body. Like, I am an only child. I always have taken myself seriously. I never really had a like quote childhood. Like, I didn't play with toys. I was always making things up and wandering places, but I was the kid who would go hiking and look for cracks in the rock faces that looked like doorways that might just be like portals. I just never felt very childlike. Like, I was very, very serious. I spoke in full sentences from the time I learned to speak, and just I don't know. I was very ornery and very stubborn, and I definitely think not nearly as friendly as Cassidy. I was much more like I was. Yeah, I was. I wish I was like Cassidy, but I was much more like Lara.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's incredible as well. I'm so glad she was in the second book as well. Like even just kind of not in present, but she made an
Oh, wait
appearance.
for the third, man.
I can't wait. Hannah sent me it from Scholastic, but it hasn't come yet, and I was like, I'm dying to read it. I am just
Oh,
dying to
it's
read it.
dark.
Um,
I mean, I pride myself on middle grades that are not actually very light because I think that like middle grade is the perfect place to be afraid when you think about how we're learning as readers at that age, the power that we have to pick up and put down a story. But I will admit that Bridge of Souls is quite dark.
Oh, I'm excited about that though. Middle grades that are dark are usually some of my favorite, and I don't know why that is. That probably leads really nicely into my question of why did you choose middle grade to write this series in? Because you're already an established young adult and adult writer before this series, so why not? Why didn't you write it for an older age group? And this is quite a dark one as well. So
Yeah. I mean, this is about death and ghosts and like the liminal space between. Yeah, you know, it's because I wanted to write a scary story. And I truly, like, when you look at scary stories and you look at audience, yes, you've got like Stephen King, certain stories on the adult side, and you've got thrillers. You don't really have a huge amount of YA horror. It's quite specialized. But like, I truly believe that middle grade is the best place to write a scary story because one, having done like many school events and all, children are so much braver than adults. They're afraid of different things and they're not afraid of the things that we as adults are afraid of. And like, we tend to like to put our fears onto them. Like, oh, we must protect children from the fears that we have, but they have totally different fears. And they're just so much bolder and so much more adventurous. And I love that for them. But I also, like I said before, I think that's the age at which, one, you become a passionate reader. That's like the first threshold in which we can like truly take control of our experience and our imaginations. And the power that comes with reading something a bit scary and learning the agency that you have as a reader. And the fact is, like, we're going to experience scary things in our lives and we're not going to be able to close the book on those things. But to have some of our early experiences with frightening things be things that we can control the experience of picking it up and putting it down. And look, like, there are people out there, children out there, whose real lives are far scarier than anything that I write about. But on the whole, to give them a kind of spooky experience, one that they can put down, but also my main characters are afraid as well. It's not as though I'm saying to the reader, oh, if you're scared by this, you're being silly. My characters are scared. And it's about doing things even though you're scared. It's about having the bravery to take those chances. And so I think it's just the right and totally right environment to tell a scary story.
Yeah, 100%. Was it a challenge then to like change your writing style for this book?
Not really, but so I write for middle graders, I write for YA, and I write for adult. And I get asked a lot then, like, how does the writing change? And the fact is, it doesn't much. Obviously, you know, there are some, like, I cuss a lot in my adult books and I don't do that as much. But what I would say is that when I'm sitting down to write a book, I simply ask myself, what age of myself am I writing for? Because as we discussed earlier, like, I was a weird 10-year-old. So I can't write to everyone else's 10-year-old experience, but I know exactly who I was when I was 10, 11, and 12. And so I knew the kind of story I needed or wanted. So I write to that. And when I'm writing for YA, I know who I was at 17 and as adult, whatever age I am at the time I'm writing the book. So it's less about changing myself and more just picking a version of myself.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, if you had have written this for like even younger than that, I saw in an interview that you had executed your teddy bears at 5 years old, and I was like,
I did have like a formal trial. We had a 2-story house and it had those, you know, the bars on the railing up on a top story. And I had Care Bears and I did bind their wrists behind their back, put them in between each of the pillars, and then walk along, detail their crimes, and then kick them off the rail. So when my parents came home, they found my entire collection of Care Bears just kind of swinging. And I understand that was a bit unnerving for them.
but if they committed a crime, they committed a crime, so it was justice, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I did also have an incident with a babysitter wherein I tied them to a chair in such a way that they got unnecessarily concerned, I would say. And I didn't have a babysitter for quite a while after that. But this is all to say, like, yeah, I think I could have written it for even younger.
Yeah, exactly. Because children just say things in such a different way, and they are kind of scared in different ways too.
Haven't you ever looked up those, like, the lists of scary things children have said, like, to their parents? It is so horrifying. You like look at them and it's like a 3-year-old standing in a room being like, why aren't you talking to the man? And he's like, the man in the corner that no one else can see, and they're just carrying on conversations with them, and you're like, no, that's okay. That's okay.
Ooh. Oh gosh, I know my 2-year-old nephew loves to watch things with Siren Head in it. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No.
Oh my God, it's scary. Google Siren Head. When
Siren.
you Siren Head, yeah, oh,
Okay.
it's
I'll do
freaky.
it.
I would not have.
I'll do it, but if I have nightmares, I'm coming back and I'm blaming you.
That's fair. Just inspiration for the next book, maybe.
Perfect.
So how did the Cassidy Blake series come about? How did you start brainstorming it? What was the initial inspiration to write it?
Okay, so as somebody who's American raised, like Americans don't really believe in ghosts. Like if you do, it's a very big thing. Like it's a thing you have to declare. And I remember when I was living in that garden shed in Liverpool, something that struck me was that the house that I was living in, the house out next to the garden shed, very haunted. Just very haunted. And I'd been living there about a month before I felt like maybe I should bring it up. Everyone else in the house is going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to mention, I think this house is haunted. To which every one of my housemates was like, no shit. And I was like, you see, that blasé attitude is a little bit different. And then when I moved to Edinburgh, sure enough, like when ghosts came up, everyone was just kind of matter of fact about them. Not only that, but most people around me in Scotland had a ghost story of their own, and they would bring it up the same way you'd bring up a story about your aunt or your grandparent. And I was fascinated by the normalization of ghost stories and this idea that everywhere you went, and especially in a city like Edinburgh that prides itself on being haunted, it just felt like everyone I spoke to, from a taxi driver to a friend to a woman at the cafe, had a ghost story to share with me. So I knew I wanted to write a story about a girl who is neither alive nor dead, and I wanted to write a story about ghost stories. And so that's like the two elements that came together, which is that you have Cassidy Blake, who almost drowns or does drown and is brought back to life by a ghost named Jacob, and she pulls him into the land of the living as he pulls her out of the land of the dead. But on the other side, you have her parents, who have been hired to film a TV show about the world's most haunted cities, collecting ghost stories. And so it was this delightful experience because every ghost story in all 3 books is real. It's a recorded legend. Only ones I made up are the center narratives. So like the woman in red, and then the boy in the catacombs, the specific child that I picked, and then my character in book 3, Bridge of Souls. But every other ghost story that you read in the books is recorded legend for the city. So everyone in Edinburgh is a recorded Edinburgh ghost story that you can look up and you can find out about. Everyone's a Paris ghost story. Everyone's a New Orleans ghost story.
That's so cool. And so when you're picking a place, do you then, like say in New Orleans for book 3, are you researching intently for the location? Is that, like, why did you pick sort of each of the cities for the book so far? Was there any reasoning for that?
Yeah. So Edinburgh was simple because I was living there and I thought I want to write a love letter to this place. And then when it came time to pick a second city, obviously I had a list of like 10 cities in different countries that I could have picked. But something that I loved about the contrast between Paris and Edinburgh is that Edinburgh is a city that wears its hauntings on its sleeves. Paris is not a city you think of as haunted. Paris is a city of light and art and beauty and pastry. Like it's just this gorgeous, like very, very vibrant, well-lit place. It's not the dark gray alleys and closes of Edinburgh. But then the more you research Paris, you find out not only about ghost stories associated with every bridge and road and building, but about the catacombs, which of course run almost entirely, like almost anywhere you walk in Paris, you're walking on dead bodies. And I just thought, what a great contrast that you've got a city that just relishes its status as haunted, and you have a city that really does its best to bury, literally, that side of itself. And then with New Orleans is just one of the most haunted places in the world, certainly one of the most haunted in the United States. And so I knew I couldn't not do a book about New Orleans.
That is, that's so interesting, the stuff about Paris as well, because even though I have been twice, but it's mainly, I've never been to the catacombs. They do freak me out. But like, you've been to Paris, right? have you been inside the catacombs as well?
Oh, I don't go any place I don't write about any place I haven't gone.
Okay.
So but I will say, I am a severely claustrophobic and highly anxious person. Going down into the catacombs was one of the most difficult things I have ever done, because you go, just like I describe in the book, you go down 5 stories, like a spiral metal staircase. And when you get to the bottom, you're not in the catacombs. You are in a hallway made of stone that is roughly the dimensions of a coffin. And you have to walk for 10 minutes down this hallway. Like, it never gets wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. And then you come to this antechamber, and from there you go into the catacombs. And you are never without the knowledge that you are 5 stories underground. You can feel the weight of the earth on top of you. And I will say, like, it wasn't scary in the way that some of the places in Edinburgh was scary. Like, it wasn't as visceral, but it was undeniably claustrophobic.
You can really feel that in the book as well. I mean, I've been to Edinburgh too, and like, so let me inflate your ego for just a second and say, like, the way you describe it, it does feel like you're there.
Okay.
And Edinburgh, yeah, I could say it so clearly, but because I hadn't been to the catacombs, that was a totally new experience for me. But I could feel the claustrophobia. I could feel Cassidy going down in the descriptions of it. I felt like I was there. So that is why I'm so excited for book 3, because I've never been to New Orleans before. And I just want to say it. These books are great for traveling. We can't travel right now, but you can go and visit places. So that must be, is that one of the reasons why you love writing this series? Is it because you can sort of go to different places? What is it about the series that you love to write personally?
I mean, I love the research. Like, I genuinely love learning the ghost stories. I love just like the challenge of recreating a real place. And it's a challenge. Like, I'll never forget when I was working on City of Ghosts, and one place changed. Like, the facade of something, of an entry point into Mary King's Close, had changed between when I had last visited it and when the book, and I realized I had to rewrite an entire chapter to make sure that, because I have a lot of readers who will then go to these places and get to walk the places that Cassidy went. And I didn't want it to not line up. And so while I spend a lot of my time writing fantasy novels, wherein I get to conjure places wholesale and create from scratch, it's a totally different challenge to say, okay, how can I capture a very real place using the fewest words possible? And so I often will ask myself, okay, you have 1 page to describe New Orleans or Paris or Edinburgh. What do you choose to say? How do you do it? And this comes from, to be very honest, years of traveling while researching Addie LaRue, one of my adult books that takes place in various cities, and asking myself, like, you have a paragraph. Like, you have a paragraph to describe Prague. What are you going to say? And so I mostly am just looking for ways to distill certain elements. And at the same time, there's no such thing as a universal experience of a city. Everyone's going to experience it differently. But there are certain things that I feel like I would notice if somebody didn't mention them about a city like Edinburgh. If you don't mention the cobblestones, which take over most of Old Town, if you don't mention any of the closes, like these moments which are very viscerally Edinburgh, or, you know, the train station, any of it, which I just feel like if you'd spent 10 minutes in Edinburgh, you would know, you would feel the way that the roads and the sky are the same color most of the time, this kind of thing. So it's mostly just a challenge for me to try and distill and recreate a place that most of my readers haven't been.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I love this series so much. Even if I have been there, it's like visiting it again. It feels like coming back home, because I do. Scotland is the love of my life. It is it's where I want to live when I'm older. When I'm,
It's magical. So, you're not too far.
I'm not. No, I just need to just
hop that border.
Pack everything up.
Yeah.
Just go. So we can talk about Bridge of Souls then, but I can imagine you'll have to be so vague as to like not spoil anything. But can you tell us like kind of the plot of book 3? Like, what has Cassidy found herself in now?
You are the first interview because the book's not out yet, you're the first interview I've done for Bridge of Souls. And so that paused me actually trying to figure out what I can say. I will say something happens at the end of Tunnel of Bones.
Oh, yes.
That is the introduction of the main villain for Bridge of Souls. I'm a really big fan in my work of comeuppance, this idea that like give and take always have to equal out. And the thing about Cassidy and Lara is that they're in-betweeners. They have cheated death. They were supposed to die. They didn't. They came back. And now there is an unpaid tithe. And so I would say that it's only a matter of time before Cassidy was going to have to find herself confronting not a spirit, but or not chasing down another spirit, but being the source of somebody else's chase. We'll say that.
Okay. And I love this part because when I ask authors about their upcoming book, I see them struggle. So, I mean, and not that I love to see you struggle or anything, but just to say, like, will you slip out something? Will I get an exclusive? Yeah, that's what I want.
I'm historically so bad at secrets that I mean, like, I used to have publicists sit in the back of the room while I was doing events and just make direct eye contact with me. Like, don't do it. Don't say it. It's more than 3 years out. You shouldn't say it. So yeah, I'm very bad about it. But I will say that this is not just the darkest book, but it is unconventional in that Cassidy isn't pursuing a spirit. A spirit is pursuing Cassidy.
When you get to the end of Tunnel of Bones and you see that man with the brim hat, the mask, gosh, that is terrifying. That is terrifying. And I did want to ask, like, how much more we will see of him. But if he is, like,
he is the baddie.
Oh, yes, that's what I love to hear. What about Jacob then? Because Jacob's also, I mean, again, like, obviously you can't say too much, but what can we expect from Jacob? Because he is kind of gradually getting stronger.
Yeah, again, the rebalancing of scales really in this book is everything, which is that, you know, Cassidy didn't listen to Lara when she said she should have sent Jacob on. And now Jacob is becoming more and more, not like a poltergeist necessarily, but he's definitely becoming manifested in a way that won't end well if something is not done about Jacob.
That is literally... It's so exciting though. Like, that's the one thing that I can't wait for Bridge of Souls is that relationship between Cassidy and Jacob. And seeing like how far it'll go and like how much of a stretch it'll be. Will this be the last time we see Cassidy and Jacob, or are you planning more in the series?
I'd say it's the last time for right now. Like, I wouldn't say that this is the end of it forever. But I will say that I tried to give us a nice little stopping point for a while, just because I like to have things move in arcs. And so I think if it continues, my publisher really wants it to continue and I really want to sleep a little bit. So if it continues, what will happen is it will have a new arc. I really like arcs of 3. So what I will say is that it's driving towards something in this book, that it's not just going to like do. Tunnel of Bones has kind of that turn cliffhanger at the end. And I will say that this one is moving towards something. Okay,
so there's going to be a lot more resolution than answers in this one. Okay, that gives me something then, because like, is there anything at all you can say like exclusive wise about book 3? Is there anything in it that you found rather challenging in book 3?
Yeah, I will say that. So the thing about New Orleans history is that it's really inextricable from a lot of the slavery and difficulties, a lot of really the darkest parts of American history. And I will say that writing a couple of the locations that had deep ties to just not only horrific events from a perspective of ghosts, and, you know, ghosts don't tend to come out of happy environments, but just looking and trying to examine New Orleans history without shying away from the fact that, like, I needed to do due diligence to why New Orleans has as many ghosts as it does.
Okay. I'm picturing. I just can't wait for this book to come through the post.
If anyone has ever watched American Horror Story, Coven, which is the one set in New Orleans, the LaLaurie Mansion features in the book as well. And that was probably one of the most difficult sites to write about. And one of the only sites that I had to go based on research, because you can't go in. It's a privately owned. Once upon a time, it was owned by Nick Cage. It has been owned by different celebrities. It's so weird. And I will say that, like, I only got to include one of the stories in the book, but the stories that I heard about the LaLaurie Mansion and like people's, not like what happened historically, but tenants of the property and people looking after the property and the experiences that they had while looking after the property gave me full body chills on a blue sky day in New Orleans. Like, it is one of the most horrifying buildings to even be in close proximity to.
Oh my gosh. That, yeah, that makes it's so interesting. So we'll hear more about those kind of stories through kind of Cassidy's adventure in the third one. Oh, exactly. That's awesome. And Coven is my favorite season of American
It's amazing. It's amazing. I get to work with Emma Roberts now on my upcoming TV show. She's one of my producers. And like, I've been such a fan since Coven. Like, all the seasons are great, but Coven is just a delight.
It is. It just has everything. It has the humor, the darkness. It embodies it. So I guess to wrap up, my final question for you is your future projects. Is there anything you're working on? Anything you're excited about? I mean, as you've mentioned, the TV show, but also, like, are you writing any more middle grade? Like, what's the future looking like?
It's interesting. My next book, which I haven't been able to like fully announce yet, so I've just been teasing at it for like a year. I can't announce it till I'm finished writing it, which is probably smart. It's weird because historically I would have said it fell into middle grade or YA or adult. And I'm kind of at a weird little point in my career now where I don't really think it falls into any category. And luckily my publisher has enough faith in me now to be like, that's fine. But what I will say is it's like The Secret Garden meets Crimson Peak. So it's very dark. And it is about a girl and a garden wall and a god of death. And I don't really know where it falls.
That's like timeless though. That's kind of, I feel like a lot of children's classics these days are the kind of like Earthsea, for example, as well. I feel like you could read that at any age.
Because I think the protagonist is like 14, so she's at that young middle grade YA threshold, but it's also very adult in terms of how scary it is. As you can tell, I seem to like a little bit of horror and things, but my hope is that it'll read as kind of timeless. So my hope is that it'll appeal to my readers who are actually kids, as well as my readers who are young adults and coming to my books, whatever age they are. I don't really, that classification that we use, it exists as a way to shelve books, but so often it's not meant to delineate who reads those books, as proved by the fact we're having this conversation now about City of Ghosts.
Yeah, and I totally get the whole kind of shelving books idea as well, which is a little bit of a shame, really, because I know, like, my Cheetah Girls books, I could have read that at any age, but I've got it in my middle grade, but it could be, read by anyone. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much for joining this interview. Like, it's honestly been such a delight. I really, really hope that in the future as well that you will be able to have a break too. It sounds like you're so busy.
No, never any breaks. No rest for the wickedly ambitious, Gavin.
I guess that's fair though, because has it been 10 years now since you first published? Oh my gosh, happy 10 years.
Thank you. It will be 10 years this August from my first publication. But yeah, I've been in publishing for 10 years now, and I have every age line to prove it.
Well, yeah, what a ride. Nobody has an extensive bibliography, I think. So
at some point I'll take a nap.
Good. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in as well. Remember, there are links to buy Bridge of Souls in the description. And yeah, thanks, everyone. Bye.